Hey guys, Mitchell here. Today I have something pretty cool to share with you. It's a marketing plan that we're currently using to help one of our authors grow his audience and launch his book. And since this formula has helped to lift his platform up by more than 400%, and that spike is only after a few days since it had been set into motion, we're calling this the Attention Spike Formula. Now, another cool thing about watching this video is I'm going to give you the entire rundown of the formula. That way you can copy it, mold it, and transform it to any way you need to promote your own books. The reason why we're sharing this with you without you needing to sign up as a premium client with us is that deep down as a marketing team, we fundamentally believe every author at every level should have the best information around to do big things for themselves and their books, just as much as if we were intimately working to promote your books for you. Right now, we're giving you the foundation to make it on your own. Think of it as the tip of the iceberg we call book marketing. But you don't need upwards of 20 years worth of knowledge that's centered around how to promote a book, as in how to get a person to say yes to buying what you've written, or knowing how to get around in the online marketing trenches, which is where we draw our experience from too. Instead, you can start attracting readers all on your own. Think of the tip of the iceberg that you're learning today. When it's in your corner, it's like peeking behind the curtain that's been hiding the wizard for all of those years. Just a glimpse is powerful enough to spark change. And that's our hope, to profoundly spark change in your ability to get your books seen and in the hands of the people who will love them. Now, if this sounds good to you, then let me get you up to speed on how we're using this formula. Let's start with a little rundown on the situation. We were contacted by a very talented writer who, throughout his career, had been traditionally published by major houses, but for the launch of his most recent novel, he knew he was going to need some help to drum up the amount of pre-order sales he was going to get, and to get those early reader reviews up on Amazon that just need to get flowing. Now, one thing I do have to confess about this scenario, otherwise this whole story just wouldn't make any sense, is that this author, and this is despite all of his previous accomplishments as a novelist, he was left in a pretty tight spot by his previous publishers. Would you believe me if I told you he had no way of reaching out to his previous readers? This meant everyone who had hunkered down with one of his earlier novels, the people who'd fallen in love with his books, they had no way of knowing he had a new book coming out. So essentially, this author is starting from scratch. And that can be a very scary place to be for an author. That's because after all the time and energy that goes into creating a book, even the slightest chance that it could wind up lost, forgotten, or just plain out of sight from its readers, who would otherwise fall in love with it, it's a devastating thought. I understand I'm not alone in knowing a good book can change a person's life. Over the years, we've had countless first-hand conversations with avid readers. Each one of those conversations had made it perfectly clear. When someone finds that one book, it lingers with them long after it's been shut. Making sure it's your book, the one that will forever change a reader's world, there can't be a greater reward for a writer than that. So, like I said, it can be a very scary place to be when you've put a lot of effort and energy into a book and it never gets a chance to be discovered. Another thing that can haunt you, just like with our author, is the easiest people to sell your books to are the people who've already made the commitment to read one of your previous books. If you're an author who has several books out, you'll naturally have a greater ability to sell books number 3 and number 4 than in the beginning when you're releasing books number 1 and number 2. This is because, typically, you don't have a big enough platform to launch your first books into the selling stratosphere. Now, this is something a first-time author should always be keeping in mind and should be considering, is because when you focus on building up your audience in the early days, you're building up your brand and your following, down the road, this just translates into book sales. This is because when you do start to get those trickling of book sales, you understand who your true base of readers are. From that point, you'll be able to factor out how many of the people who are following you will go out and buy your next book. So with the right amount of outreach, you end up stacking new readers on top of your earlier audience. That's how you grow and that's how you mature. And all this is possible because you've taken the time to establish a relationship with them. And this relationship is built on one very important element: trust. Now, as a side note, this is one reason why we always recommend authors should be starting up a newsletter, especially in the beginning of your career. Now, this is going to be outside of any marketing efforts your publishers are doing if you are being traditionally published. That way, if you do switch houses or you self-publish a title, you have the ability to reach out to your readers when you need them, all on your own. Even if you're relying on sites like Amazon to get your book recommended to readers, you still want to have more control over the process than some algorithm that's deciding on if your book is relevant enough to be shared with readers. Examples of when a newsletter can come in handy are just like the situation our author is in right now. If you want to announce a new book, you can do that. You might even want to discount a book or discount an entire series that you've written. There are many reasons why a newsletter is a very important asset to have, but the biggest is the simplest. It allows you to sell your books. But beyond all of this, let's start jumping into the formula that's actually responsible for generating 473 highly targeted and responsive new readers within just days. Now, all these people signed up for his newsletter in such a short amount of time because we were able to grab their attention with 1, something that interested them, and 2, it wasn't a straight sales pitch. Every day we come across instances where authors seem to be charging right out of the gates when anyone shows any interest in their books. They really immediately go into asking for a book purchase. The whole thing plays out as if they walked up to a stranger, held out their hand, and asked them for their money. Looking at this from an outsider's perspective, it would look a bit odd, right? But in these authors' minds, and you know what, I totally get their frustrations. They think it's just part of how the process of promoting a book online actually works. But in reality, let me show you what really makes book marketing tick. The whole process is more like how you ask someone out for a date. It all starts with walking up to someone you find attractive. You talk for a while, you find out if you click. If you do click, then you ask them for their phone number. Next, you follow up with a call. You call them to set up the actual date. If everything goes well from there, as in the date was a success, you repeat the process by asking them out for a second date, a third date, a fourth. The book selling process is exactly the same. It requires a series of predetermined steps that move people through being complete strangers to becoming partners in your efforts. It's all based on 4 things: the introduction, rapport, follow-up, and finally, action. Do you see how book promoting kind of mirrors the dating process? Now, there's no way I can get into the heavy psychology of buying and selling here in this standalone video. It would take up all of our time and then some. But for the 4 steps is the flow of how all of this actually works. Understanding that makes things a whole lot easier. And this is what we did for our author. He needed to immediately get through steps 1 and 2, the introduction and rapport, respectively. So we used our formula, and then we drafted the message that people saw right at the first interaction they had with him. We told him he was an author, and we were very upfront about that, and that he had a new book coming out, which was the whole reason why they were even reading his opening message. This is because it sets the stage for the relationship, and this is actually very important to anyone who's worrying about sounding like a used car salesperson. This is because when you clearly establish the needs of the relationship, it puts people in a certain frame of mind. People expect authors to try to sell them their books. It's in this expectation that makes it okay to promote to people. While if a friend tried to do the exact same thing out of nowhere, it would be a little off-putting. By the way, if you never try to sell your books to your audience, it would seem a little weird, actually. And you probably start to find that people fall off the radar because you're just not fulfilling your expected role. Now, getting these 473 people to raise their hands and say yes, they do want to join in on the author's newsletter might not seem like a whole big win to you, especially when some authors are sporting some mega numbers when it comes to fans on places like Facebook. But you have to remember, we were starting from scratch. Absolute zero. So going from nothing to just under 500 new subscribers on his newsletter in a fraction of a week is actually pretty impressive, and especially since the cost to get those people signed up to his newsletter was very small. Each subscriber cost just 11 cents. The total cost of the entire run to get just these people on his newsletter came out to $52.03. For some, I know $50 might seem like a steep investment, especially in the beginning. But let's take a look at the value of the numbers. This will give you a better understanding for why this formula is set up in your favor. Now, if you were running a similar campaign and you got the same new readers, those 473, to opt into your newsletter, and you were able to convert 10%, and that's actually, 10% is a low number. If you were to get those people, though, those 10% to go on to buy your book, you have 47 potential sales there. Now, the return you see depends on the pricing strategy for your book. To better illustrate things, let's use the price of our author's books as an example. He has it available in both paperback and ebook. The price of the paperback, which is listed at $14.95, is currently available at $13.46. Now, if you multiply that price with the 47 readers, you actually end up with $632.62 in sales. And this is only from a sample of new readers, which cost you just $50. That's not too shabby, right? You walk away with a 1,115.87% return on your initial investment of just about $50. But let's take a look at this example from a different angle. Let's say you drove people to the paperback listing of the book on Amazon, but those 47 people actually went on to buy the ebook instead. The numbers are still on your side. You take the ebook price, which is $4.99, you multiply that by the 47 readers, and that gives you $234.53 in book sales. Your return still comes out to more than 350% from what you initially spent to get those readers. And even if you're like most authors who price their book at $2.99, you'd find you've made $140.53 from those 47 book sales. That's still a return of 170% from your beginning investment, well over triple the money you started out with. Of course, I do have to say, if your book is up on Amazon, you'll have to factor out their percentage of their take, but that's only a fraction of the profit you're making from those book sales. To test this out for yourself, you'll want to make sure you're targeting the right people. That's actually the secret sauce that makes all of this work. For example, if you write military novels, you might find you share the same audience as Tom Clancy or W.E.B. Griffin. You wouldn't want to be targeting fans of Gillian Flynn just because they're readers, right? We're very fortunate to have a checklist that we've developed over the years to help determine if we're reaching out to the right people for our authors. And that's important when you're running tests like this formula. So your results may vary from ours in that respect. But if you're in the initial phase of building an audience, or you're trying to win back the attention of the people who've already read your books, you want to be able to keep that in mind. You want to make sure you know who your ideal readers are, and that way you can seek those people out perfectly. Now, the one thing I can't do is show you the exact ad we're using, since, like I said, it's an active promotion. But let me explain the framework, and at another point, I'll give you the email template we're actually pairing along with it. This is because having a very strong follow-up sequence is a crucial step when you're running promotions that target total strangers. The speed at which you take someone from just meeting you to the point where they're being pitched your novel is determined by what stage your book is in. Since we were on a very short timeline for our author's book release, we were going to be running on high gear. The first thing we did was sit down with his book, and that's actually a very important step because, like most novels, it has many layers to it. So this one has elements of mystery, there's humor woven in with it, and there's a little bit of romance too. Since the book had many factors to it, we settled on drawing in only one aspect of the audience who would find his book worth their time. The other elements of the book, such as the mystery or the humor portions of it that actually attract a different set of readers, we set those aside for that point, and later on we would actually target them using different ads. But in the beginning we picked just one audience to focus on. This meant that instead of trying to reach a vast array of readers, we wanted to keep the focus as narrow as possible. That way we could effectively speak to one specific audience at a time. From there, once we've hit our stride, we'd adapt the same approach, but finally target the other groups of people who'd be interested in his books as well. Each is targeted separately. Doing it this way enables you to create content that will resonate with your targeted group. From there, you simply move them through the follow-up sequence until you reach the step where you ask them to take an action, such as buying your book. Now, there are many ways to get people to see your content. For our author, we chose Facebook as our traffic driver. One reason is because it's simple to start with. The second reason is it's the primary way he actually wants to interact with readers outside of his website. Now, let me mention that wherever you promote online, you want to be making sure you understand how people use that site. Using Facebook as our example again, the way people actually use it is to keep up with family and friends. Sometimes it's used to keep up with what's happening in the world as well, but other than that, it's actually used for connecting with people they already know. That's the intent of why people use Facebook. Now, I don't know about you, but when I do log into my personal account, I get bombarded with quiz results from all my friends who want to know what classic evil Disney character they most resemble in the movies, or what celebrity couple them and their spouse are most like. You might even be guilty of taking a few of these quizzes yourself. You know what? That's okay. We've all done it. I've done it. They're fun and entertaining, right? Or at least they're supposed to be. And that reveals what Facebook is essentially all about. It's meant to be a source of fun and entertainment. Doesn't it sound like the perfect spot for an author to be? So to help our author get seen as fun and entertaining, we simply ran a quiz that targeted the one aspect of his audience. Like I said, we were only attracting one specific group of reader at this point. And by attracting that one specific group is the essence of why this promotion formula is so powerful. It blends in with what people are already used to seeing and engaging with, the quizzes that pop up in their newsfeed. Since the environment inside of Facebook is not centered around buying and selling, it's important to play to people's interest, especially in the beginning. This gives you the in. You'll need to build that rapid amount of rapport and trust that's needed to get someone to buy your books. It's because they get a sense that you already understand them. After all, you did target them with something that they found interesting. Now, another reason why a quiz is such a great vehicle to lead a promotion off with is that it can actually be done using sites like SurveyMonkey. And they're usually low cost or they're free, and they're pretty easy to do. You just drop the quiz into a website. That's what we did for our author, and you can just easily set it up on Facebook and have it hosted on a tab within your author page. Then once you've figured out where you want to send people to for them to take the quiz, it's time to develop your ad. Since we were using Facebook, we shared the link to where the quiz is posted. We just copied and pasted the link, and then from that point, you're good to go. The image we used went along perfectly with the theme of the quiz, and it was just taken right from the book package, so we didn't have to go out and develop a whole new image or purchase a new image. It's one that the author already had, and it fit well with the theme of the quiz, and so we kept it the branding aspect there. Now, if you're to post this on Facebook, you have to remember, if it's on your website, that Facebook's going to search for every image that it finds on your site. So you will have to make sure you're double checking to make sure you're featuring the right image for the quiz. But this can actually play in your favor, because before you hit the publish button, you can actually replace the image Facebook grabs from your site and switch it with one that isn't already on there. This is a handy way to test out the best images to run with your campaigns. So if you were to roll out this promotion to a larger set of people, you're giving that post the best ability and the better chance to drawing in potential and more relevant clicks from people who see them. But in the beginning, though, I do recommend you just keep it simple. Pick one image. That actually is the beginning. It's better to start out that way because it gives you a base to work off of, and you know how many clicks you might be getting for a certain post. Now, it's important to note here that the reason why you're sharing a link instead of a photo is to help with converting views into clicks. If you were only to upload an image and paste the link directly back to your website in the description of the image, that link actually gets buried by many actions. What do I mean by that? What you'll find is most of the time people will see an image, click on it, hit the like button just for the image, and then move on without ever clicking on the link. When you share a link in comparison, though, the image will send people to the quiz. The headline, when clicked, will send people to the quiz. When you even have a link inside the text area, that will send people to the quiz if they click on it. That gives you 3 opportunities where people can click over to your quiz. Another reason, and this is actually a pretty fun one to play with as well, is Facebook has what's called call to action buttons, which can be natively plugged in to help with the conversion process. I personally like these because it adds in one more chance for people to go where you want to send them. So they can click on the image, the headline, the link, and now a button that tells them, click here to learn more. Pretty cool, right? Now the next stage in the setup is to simply introduce yourself. Like I've already mentioned, all you have to do is explain who you are and explain why you've put together the quiz. One thing you want to make sure you're doing is giving them, the visitors, a chance to sign up for your newsletter before they move on to taking the quiz. And that's really all there is to it. You either have it set up so where they can sign up and then take the quiz, or they can take the quiz and then set it up. So this way, it's important to remember to bookend the quiz with your newsletter opt-in forms, because some people don't mind signing up right away, but others sometimes they need more reassurance before they trust you with their email. Now, when you're framing the introduction to the quiz, you want to make sure you're keeping the message short and sweet. For example, of what things would look like is something like this. Hello, my name is Ernest. I'm in the process of finishing up a book that centers around an old fisherman who hooks the greatest catch of his life. Fishing is one of my passions aside from writing. I imagine any other who appreciates the thrill of the catch will find testing their knowledge on the subject great fun. If you do find it fun, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. This way you can stay up to date with all that's fishing. Good luck. The reason why we're keeping it short and sweet is because the whole reason why they clicked over to take the quiz is, well, to take the quiz. You don't want to stand in their way for too long. Plus, it offers a low barrier for people as they say to themselves, okay, he's an author and he's got a new book coming out about fishing. Great. Let's move on to the quiz. Now you can easily swap out the details of this example and fill them in with your own specific needs. When it comes to the actual quiz, a point to remember is that you don't have to have a huge string of questions. We tested it out and 10 seems to be like the magic number, since it's neither too long or too short. And that way you can actually vary the types of questions you're asking. For example, if we're using the quiz to promote Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, we'd want to fill it with trivia the casual fishing enthusiast would know just as much as someone who's as seasoned as his main character, who's been fishing all of his life, would know too. You'll want to mix in some easy to answer questions as well as some stumpers tossed in for good measure too. This gives the quiz a more robust and entertaining feel. Another reason for the tougher questions is that you have to remember, since you're targeting a certain type of reader who most likely immerses themselves in the subject on a regular basis, they very well might know more about the subject than you. An interesting fact is we pulled people after they'd taken the quiz and found some of them even went on to Google the answers to the harder questions, the ones that stumped them, just to get a better score on the quiz. This left us knowing two things. Some people hate to lose, and two, these people are the ones who are the most engaged with you and the quiz. If you made some of the possible answers entertaining, especially for those tougher questions, you'll actually find you're gaining a rapid amount of trust just by showing you're having fun too. So what's next? It's clear you found this video helpful. After all, you did watch it all the way through. You also want to be able to give your book the best chance out there to get read and enjoyed. Some writers spend years developing just one book. With all the time and effort you've personally put into creating your book, it's obvious you want to be able to make sure you're promoting it as best as you can. As a manager promoting books since 2007, I've personally been responsible for helping teams go on to sell millions of dollars in revenue from then to now. If you're on the lookout for getting as many ideas like this quiz formula as possible that will get your book discovered and get more people other than your friends and family reading your books, then I'd like to invite you to sign up for the early bird list for a free advanced training class we're putting together. The stuff we're going to cover is what you'll need to know before you spend a single minute more of your time promoting a book. It's way beyond the one method we showed you today, so it'll give you the ability to pick and choose the perfect marketing strategy for you and your title. This training will lay out what you need to know about building an active audience, how to get those people to buy what you've written, how to get those people in the right frame of mind to want to leave a review for you on sites like Amazon, and in the process, they'll definitely want to go out and recommend your work to basically everyone they know. Pretty cool, right? Now, it's very easy to get on the early bird list. All you have to do is click the button you see down below. Another thing besides this training is tomorrow you'll get the email template I mentioned earlier that will help you speed up the report process for the people who signed up for your newsletter, which, by the way, will have come from this formula we just talked about. That is, if you put it into use. The email template complements what you learned today, and tomorrow you'll see why. But beyond that, I want to thank you for spending your valuable time watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.